Welcome back, fellow internet adventurers. Get ready for another wild ride through Reddit's weirdest stories. We will dive deep into the quirkiest corners of the internet. Grab your popcorn and join us on this adventure. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Let's get started. My son Matt turned 13, and I started to suspect my wife of cheating on me. I picked up some pictures at the drugstore on the way home from work since Julia wasn't home yet. I sat down and looked at them. It was a beautiful day when Matt came home and found his friends at a surprise party in South. I was really shocked. As I looked at the pictures, I found a great one of Matt and my friend Steve. It was a close-up of their faces. Steve has been my best friend for life. His kids call me Uncle John, and mine they call him Uncle Steve. We are very close. Something caught my eye when I compared the pictures of their faces side by side. They had the same black hair color. They had the same green eye color. And they shared a similar narrow nose. Their skin tones and facial features were the same. If I hadn't known better, I would have sworn they were parents, and their other pictures were of children at the party. But something in the background caught my eye. There were Julia and Steve. They were in what I would describe as a very intimate position. In fact, it looked like they were about to kiss, or had just kissed. I looked through the other pictures, looking for something else they were in together, but I couldn't find anything. I took the two pictures out of the bag and put them in a desk drawer in my home office. The fact that my son looked like Steve, and that I had a picture of Steve and Julia in an intimate pose didn't prove anything. But I immediately wondered if I could remember other signs that Julia might have been unfaithful. I didn't have much time to think, because a few minutes later Julia walked through the front door, kissed me, and went upstairs to change was something she did every day after work. And I'd never before had any reason to suspect her suspicion in my mind. I followed her upstairs to see if I could catch her doing something. When I entered the bedroom, Julia was surprised to see me but didn't seem bothered by my presence. "Hi, how was your day?" Julia asked as she changed into her house clothes. "It's not that bad. I picked up Matt's party pictures on the way, and they turned out great. But we didn't carry too many 5 rolls of film for a birthday party," I asked. After all the trouble we went through to make her believe I wasn't having a party just to throw her a surprise party like this. I wanted to make sure Dan had enough pictures to remember him, but it was nice to bring Steve, Mary, and her kids, as well as all her friends and family, to the celebration. When Steve's name was mentioned, she flittered away. There was movement, but it came from inside, or was it in response to the name being said? Yes. Julia agreed. The party was fantastic. I got nothing else from her, except maybe a slight shudder. I decided I would keep an eye on her and Steve as much as possible to see if they were up to something. I didn't use all the high-tech tracking devices, audio recording, video cameras, and wiretaps, at least not right away. But I started tracking if Julia said where she was going to be. Then I would find reasons to call and see if she was there or not. A few weeks later, the body of a little girl missing. The little girl was found in the lake, and luckily her family had done DNA testing beforehand so they could identify her in case something happened. Julia gave me the perfect opportunity to find out what was bothering me. "John, I think we should make these DNA cards too for the kids. If something ever happens and a body or body part is found, I would like to know if it's our child or not." Julia said, "You're absolutely right. This little girl was missing teeth, and the body was pretty damaged. So normal methods didn't work. I think having the kids' DNA on file is a smart move," I said. "I would take all 4 of our kids, Matt, Ashley, Hannah, and they will be tested and file their records with the county once we were at the family doctor's office." I made the request. "John." "What's up?" the doctor Smith asked. "I would like copies of the tests. It's not that I don't trust the county to keep the information safe, but I feel better having safe copies at home." I said, "Sure, John, no problem." Many parents make the same request, Dr. Smith responded 2 weeks later. I went out of town for a week on business. While there, I visited a doctor's office to get tested DNA tests to check a woman I lived with for 8 years. Claims I am the father of her 4 children, and now she is demanding child support. I have reason to believe I am not the father of one or more of them. I have demanded the children DNA records. Now I'm asking you to tell me how many of them I should be financially responsible for. I said, "It is always sad when someone claims a child is theirs when it is not. I have seen several marriages destroyed by this," the doctor said. "Are you implying that you and this woman are not married?" the doctor asked. "No, dear, we broke up 3 years ago. I am not married to this person, and I am really upset about all of this. Before I went home, I had the envelope containing the findings. They had not yet been seen, and the closer the results came, the less sure I was that I wanted to know all. When I got home Friday night, there was a note on Julie's desk saying she and the kids had gone to her mother's for the weekend, unable to endure an entire weekend. To figure out what to do, if things were as bad as I feared, I decided to open it up just after calming my nerves with a glass of whiskey, and the results prompting me to pour another one and drink it quickly. None of my 4 children were really mine, but it was clear they had the same father. After one good drink, I had fallen asleep around 4 a.m. When I woke up, I started thinking about what I should do. I suspected Steve was the father of my children, but I needed certainty at this point to go high-tech. There is a store not far from my house that specializes in surveillance equipment. So Saturday morning, I went there and bought the whole kit. I installed small motion-activated cameras that covered every room of the house, along with sound recorders. I also had tracking devices to put in Julia's car and Steve's SUV, to make sure I would always know where they both were. I set it all up so that the information would be downloaded to a computer in the basement that I could access from my laptop anywhere. I installed the tracking device in Steve's SUV on Saturday afternoon, when he came over and took me with him, since I had called to tell him Julia would be out of town all weekend. There was a certainty that I would not be spending this weekend with her. Searching Julia's belongings for anything that could lead to her disappearance took most of Sunday morning. I knew she kept a journal and her computer seemed to be in good condition. Another piece of circumstantial evidence was the sexy lingerie I had never seen before, hidden in the bed. Julia just blew my mouth open. "John, don't worry too much, but I think I'm pregnant." She said pregnant. I asked her, "Yes, I think so. I'll go to the doctor tomorrow to see what he says." But I have a feeling that Julia confirms at this point. I decided that I was going to go to the doctor to get a fertility test too. Julia and I had been trying for a long time to have a baby before she got pregnant with Matt. I took time off from work to be with her as much as possible. It was the same with all the kids. I know it's not easy to get pregnant. We went through all that for the first 4 kids, and now she got pregnant without even trying. That seems suspicious to me. I drove to a neighboring town on Monday and went to a clinic where no one knew me. I drank tea and waited. My sperm count was above average. This was just another fact to add to the pile. I had a high sperm count, but my wife and I had tried many times to get pregnant, and it was Steve who got her pregnant. I rushed back to work and accessed the information that had been collected up to that point. The tracking devices showed that Steve went to work and then drove to a hotel on the west side of town. Julia's car spent part of the time at the doctor's office and then went to the same hotel. I had seen enough of you, so I went back to work that night. Julia was so excited to be pregnant that we were blessed with another child. I was holding back as much as I could, so I wouldn't reveal all the information I had and criminalized. Over the next few weeks, I gathered even more information and decided that they had formed a pretty good routine. They would meet for a long lunch at the hotel on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. They always had the same room reserved. I took pictures of them coming in and out, and there was no need to see what was going on inside. This was because on Tuesdays and Thursdays they would meet at our house and have privacy in our bedroom. Nguests. The more I watched, the harder it was for me to keep from slamming the door shut. Finally, after watching them for 2 months, I recorded a phone conversation that came back to me. Crazy. "Hey, are you comfortable talking to you?" She asked if John is playing golf and the kids are at their friends' houses. Julia replied, "I've been worried about John lately. Hun been strange. Do you think he could have found out everything?" Steve asked. "Hasn't found out anything in 16 years. What would he find out now?" Julia asked. "As for Matt Hun, he looks more and more like me every day." Steve said, "So what does John think? I'm the perfect wife. They'll never suspect me again. Will you touch me?" "Okay. I take it back. I can't wait until Monday." Pin. "I can't. Monday. I have a lunch meeting. It's something very important. So Tuesday, we're just going to need a very long lunch, okay? What time should I be there?" "You clarified around 11. I'll see you later." Steve concluded the conversation. I overheard this conversation on Monday. I took enough information to start divorce proceedings based on adultery, and I want to see a lawyer. Psyche. John, what grounds for divorce do you choose? Dave asks, marital infidelity. Are you sure that's really hard to prove in our state? Dave said, well, maybe you can tell me if there are enough to prove it. Pictures of my wife and her lover in the process of sexual intercourse. I also have video, in fact, even some phone conversations counted, including one where my wife admits she deliberately took steps to have children with her lover instead of me. And last but not least, DNA testing shows that none of the 4 children I'm raising are mine. That is enough. I said up. Yes, that should be more than enough. I will send your wife the divorce papers right away, Dave. He replied, I can choose when and where she gets the papers. What do you mean? Dave, he asked, tomorrow at 11, is she supposed to meet her lover at our house? We can arrange for her to meet them at home. Say 11:30 or 11:05, serving the papers at the time she commits adultery would be damning proof. Yes, that is an acceptable idea. Would it be illegal to invite my wife's parents, sisters, some of her friends, her lover's wife, and maybe her bosses? I asked her, you seem hungry for a little revenge. Can I say telling them it's a surprise party to celebrate the new baby would help? Should it be okay because they don't know what they will see in advance? Fantastic, I said to myself. I called some people after leaving the lawyer's office, inviting everyone to the surprise party in honor of Julius, with the exception of Mary. Mary, of course, would tell Steve, and then he would know something was up and not come at 10:45 on Tuesday morning. I called Mary and asked her to meet me at our house for a little chat. I had everyone wait quietly in the yard until the whole party was gathered. I said Julia was resting inside, so we would sneak up on her and surprise her. Dave was also there with the divorce papers. We snuck out unnoticed and headed to the guest bedroom. I opened the door and we all screamed. Surprise! There were many surprised faces. Both in the room and in the hallway, Ma immediately screamed to Steve and Julia's family started yelling at him. Julia started yelling at me. Steve tried to gather his clothes and jump out of the house, but his boss blocked the door and notified him later. In the middle of all this chaos, Dave walked calmly over to Julia, who was sitting on the bed under a sheet, sobbing uncontrollably. Julia Davis, you are hereby served with these divorce papers filed by your husband, John Davis. He is seeking a divorce on the grounds of adultery. Seer Davis is not seeking any form of custody of the 4 children already born, the child in her womb. DNA testing has proved that Nyera Davis is not the biological father of any of the children in a recorded phone conversation between you and Steve Wilson. You claim that you intentionally kept the children from being with Seer Davis, so she could get pregnant by her mistress. Davis claims 90% of all the estate. A court date will be scheduled for this case unless you agree to these terms. Dave said he spoke loudly and calmly, almost like a robot, handed the papers to Julia, and let both Julia and Steve lose their jobs. Steve divorced Mary and Julie's family, who used to love me. He disowned her in the divorce. I didn't get 90%. I satisfied myself with Steve for stopping me from having children. I love Julia with all my heart. If I had acted quickly and filed a lawsuit against her from the first moment of suspicion, it would have surely broken my heart now. However, knowing the depth of her infidelity and betrayal, it was easier for me to cut her out of my life. I still see her around town from time to time, and every time she tries to apologize to me, but I don't want to listen to it. She cheated on me for years. She deliberately kept me from having a child, so she could have Steve's baby, and then made me believe that I was the father. I wish she was dead if it weren't for my intense affection for her. But I will always remember the wonderful days, no matter how badly she treated me, when the kids found out that Uncle Steve was actually their father, and that the cousins were actually their half-brothers. They were perplexed. I am sad that this happened to them. They all had to spend a lot of time in therapy for this, but this was just another way that Julia hurt them. Now she has to live with them, hating him.